Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this evening's meeting on a particularly cold evening. Uh, as I say, thank you for coming, and I'd like to welcome two candidate members and their supporting officers to this evening's meeting. I'd like to start with item one, which is apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chairman. I can inform the meeting that all of the committee are present tonight, so there are no apologies from committee members. I can offer apologies on behalf of Councillor Adrian Smith, the portfolio holder for the Environment and ICT. Just about remember that. And also that Councillor Gina Placey, the portfolio holder for partnerships, is due to arrive at the meeting after 8 o'clock. She's on babysitting duties for her grandchildren, and once that very important duty has been done, she'll be getting here as soon as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. Moving to item two, minutes of the last meeting. Are you happy for me to record those as an accurate representation of that meeting? Could I have a proposer and okay, proposed Mark, seconder? Bernie, thank you very much. The next item is declarations of interest. And for this one, I have one item to declare, and that's if Careline is discussed, which it may well be, that I have a relative that uses the Careline service. Is there anyone else?
I have two. A relative, yeah.
Chairman, just to record that because of the nature of that interest, a dispensation has been granted to both of you in order that you can remain in the meeting during that item and ask questions.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any? No? Okay. On to item 4 then. Questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll now move on to items 5 and 6. My proposal is that we do have a number of questions and that we'll go through all of those questions covering those two items, which will then, after that, will allow our guests to leave for the evening and go home in the warm. And we can then discuss our responses to those two items. So if we're happy to begin on those, I'm happy to run through the questions and each of yourselves. I think for clarity of the tape, we did discuss before, and it'd be helpful if each committee member read out their question, and then the cabinet member was able to respond, and then if there's any supplementary, we could deal with that at that point. Are we all happy with that? Nobody said no, so okay, fine. So I'll start with question 1, which is from myself to Councillor Andy Baker. My question is, what is Cabinet doing or is going to do, and when, about ending its reliance on reserves to fund HRA deficits, which is unsustainable, i.e. does the Cabinet have a plan?
Thank you, Chairman, and the answer that was supplied to you, I'll read out. As set out within the Cabinet, the report to Cabinet on the 20th of December 2024, as has been the case in previous years, the use of reserves forms part of a wider managed approach that strikes the necessary balance of protecting the investment in tenants' homes, whilst recognising the need to use reserves to respond to the ongoing financial challenges that the Council continues to face. It is, however, recognised that this is not a sustainable long-term solution, but it enables the Council to meet its key priorities in the immediate term, which can be revisited as part of the HRA business plan in future years. It is important that the Council explores opportunities to balance the various competing issues during 25-26 to inform the business plan and budget from 26-27. Thank you.
Thank you for that reply. I have a couple of points. Firstly, having gone through these earlier today, I made the note, your reply sounds like the Cabinet doesn't have a plan. There doesn't seem to be anything in there that we can look at or respond or advise on. And the second point I raised is, if we continue as we are, when will our reserves be depleted?
I'll answer the second one first, if I may, Chairman. I don't think that can be answered as to when they would be depleted, because we wouldn't know, if we were to deplete them, what the demands would be on that reserve. So I wouldn't want to guesstimate and say that 26, 27 we're going to use 500,000 when we may use less or more. So it's an impossible question to answer. And just give me a couple of seconds on the first one.
Hello, would you mind if I ask the Finance Director what his thoughts are on the current situation regarding the HRI finance? If we continue as we are, when does he think there'll be we're in a position that our reserves are depleted?
Based on a hypothetical that we do nothing changes, and based on the hypothetical that the business plan that's presented to Cabinet before Christmas, it's about approximately 4 years.
And returning to the other point regarding the fact that there doesn't seem to be a plan that we can scrutinise and comment on, could I ask what your views are on that?
Yeah, I was just scribbling down some notes, Chairman. So with regard to that, we get quarterly reports on, which comes to the second question that was asked, the updates during the year that we look at. A plan, as in a written down plan, I don't think I can say we have that. What we do have is reports that come forward and tell us where we are at a specific time. And obviously we also look at savings or investment going forward in our properties. If we invest in our properties, then they will last longer, therefore we won't have to spend as much. That's the theory. In practice, whether that works or not is another thing to consider. So I think that I would hope that covers most of it.
Thank you very much for that. Does anyone else have any? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just coming back on that point then. So, I mean, we just heard that 4 years is the predicted sort of period when it's going to run out, and we can't say when or what the plan is in 4 years' time. I get that we haven't got a crystal ball. What's the plan for the next 12 months in terms of, resolving the issue of using the reserves there? And also a secondary question, probably more so for the leader, is the strategy, bearing in mind we know that there is a very strong possibility that this council won't exist maybe in 4 years' time, but will be part of a much bigger organisation. Is there a plan or thought? I'm sure we've thought about this, but what is the answer in terms of, is it a case of kicking the can down the road and letting the new organisation deal with it?
Okay, so you're talking about LGR. I think to say, is there a plan, bearing in mind it was only done Friday, and at the moment, LGR isn't going forward as we would know. All we've asked for is a postponement of elections. Now that, like you say, is probably going to mean that in 3 years' time this council will cease to exist. We've still got a job to do, is the rationale behind it. I still want to have pride in the fact that we gave over good quality housing, and we have no idea what the new unitary will do with that housing, but I wouldn't want to sit there and say that we gave over a bad stock and things like that. So we will be continuing with as if almost the LGR wasn't happening, because at the end of the day, our residents live in these. you know. And if you sit there and start saying, well, do you know what, somebody else's problem, really what we're saying is we don't care about our residents. And I think that's the wrong thing to be saying. So from an LGR point of view, the rationale is we're going to carry on as normal, trying to maintain the quality and the standard of our housing.
Thank you. If I can just comment, I mean, it wasn't. I wasn't saying that we're going to hand over a poor stock or it's going to be detrimental to our residents. It was more to do with the funding. You know, what we're going to hand over is it the fact that, you know, we thought, well, actually, look, the pressure's off because it's going to be somebody else's problem in terms of the funding. Yes, I can understand that we're going to spend. Is the policy spend to make sure our stock is up to the highest possible standard without the pressure of finding that money in the future. Now, maybe not something that you want to discuss, so I'm just throwing it out there that could be a strategy. But coming back to Councillor Baker, in terms of in managing this, let's call it a 4-year part at the moment, and we can't say what's going to happen in 4 years' time. Now, what's the plan for the next 12 months, please?
Right, so with regard, you'll have seen that there's an increase in the maintenance and what is called the HIPS budget, which is the Housing Improvement Plan budget. I have a meeting with officers every quarter to go through the previous quarter's figures. And I've got a meeting in 2 weeks, 2 weeks today to discuss Q3 of the budget year for 24-25. Now, with regards to that year and also going forward into 25-26, I am quite happy to advise, tell officers that should we be nearing the budget limit, if you like, the amount of money that we've set aside, I'm quite happy to turn around and say we need to stop doing anything. However, that has another impact on the fact that the regulator may not take a good view on that, because the regulator wants us to have all our housing, not just us, across the country, local authorities, social housing organisations like housing associations. There is a standard that we must meet. Now, we're going through a stock condition survey of all our stock over the next, well, until the end of 27, I think it is projected at the moment, so that we know where we need to invest money in that housing stock, what we need to do, whether we need to actually dispose of some of our properties, not the ones with tenants in, I hasten to add, because they're too expensive to maintain or repair. So that meeting in 2 weeks' time is going to be quite crucial, in my view, that I know exactly where the budget for 24-25 is at. And that is what I'm going to do in 25-26. And it's not unusual, our position at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Blake. Through the chair, is that something I can ask maybe to consider later? That's one of the points that we want to recommend, is that the results of that meeting come back to this committee so we can look at what possible savings can be made in terms of, or how the projected budget will look in 12 months' time. Is that something for the committee to consider? Thank you.
Graham.
Help the aged week. Yeah, actually, I think you've probably answered the question, and I think in a previous meeting you have answered this, but I would just like to say that I view this as the timing of this will be crucial, where we get rid of or dispose of substandard properties, and if we are run out of time and money because of everything what's going on. Have you any plans to keep an eye on that, and then maybe take the opportunity to use the finance from selling off the stock to improve our good stock?
You did ask that question this time last year, and I'll give you the same answer, I think, almost. It's actually something that's in the reply to question 17 as well. It's there. We do have some properties in our stock that are expensive to maintain or repair, and they may never even get to the decent home standard that we must comply with. Therefore, my view, and I've expressed this to officers, is that we get rid of them, we sell them, by whichever means it is the appropriate way. At the moment there are 4 such properties that are like to go forward to be sold. They are all assets within the HRA housing revenue account. So the funds from the sale of those, as far as I'm aware, and Mr. Barrett will tell me if I'm wrong, that money will go back into that account. Now, whether we ring fence that money to purchase more or put forward to purchase more, or to use that money to improve or maintain our current stock, that's a decision that will be made at that time. Personally, I would like it, we replace them. That would be my ambition. But obviously, it would depend if there's enough money to all put together to be able to do that. I hope that answers the question.
Are we happy with that? Move to question 2 then, which is Bernie Goldman to Andy Baker. Bernie, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've answered the question anyway, but by the looks of it, which is, will Cabinet be keeping an eye on the plan through the quarterly budget, financial forecast reports? I think your answer is pretty much in your answer, to be honest.
The short answer is yes. There'll be opportunities to provide updates during the year as part of the quarterly financial performance reports. And as I've just mentioned, I have meetings with officers quarterly, if not more often, with regard to where we are with budgets. Like I say, with the housing improvement plan and the repairs and maintenance.
Thank you. Do you have a
Thank you.
supplementary at all?
That's fine.
Yeah. I'd just like to ask, following up on that, firstly, you've obviously got this meeting coming up in a couple of weeks' time. It's only my thought, but maybe it would have been better to have that meeting before our meeting this evening, but that's just my view. But my follow-up would be, when can we expect to see the plans appearing? Will it be Q1, Q2, Q3? When will there be something that we can actually look at as a scrutiny committee?
I may have misunderstood the question, but so the plans for
HRA.
Okay, so it's a draft highlight priority for 25-26, which is in your agenda, the next item, I believe. So that is, it's going to be a priority. It's got to be, isn't it? I can't, as you in your first question, is we cannot rely on reserves ad infinitum, because eventually there won't be any. And then we will be in a very desperate place if that ever happens, and I do not intend that to happen. So, yes, it would have been handy to have had my Q3 budget meeting before this meeting. That doesn't give officers a lot of time to put that together for me and have the meeting in the first week of January, unfortunately. If this meeting was a little bit later on, then yes. But I'm quite happy to come back to the committee, and where I can, because obviously that is an internal meeting, but that budget is public, quite happy to come and discuss that with you at a further date, if you wish.
Thank you for that. So when do you think we'll see the plans appearing in Q1, Q2, Q3?
I think I can answer that one. As Andy, Councillor Baker said, that we've got the sustainable HR as a highlight priority. I think in there, at the next cabinet, we've got the milestones coming next month. We've got next month, so it's next month. I said, so I think you can get your answers probably from when we do that piece of work.
So, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So you will get those after your meeting in a fortnight?
So in cabinet next month, we'll be setting out the milestones for our highlight priorities. And in those milestones will be when we're talking about the draft highlight priority for 25-26 for the sustainable HRA, the milestones for that will be in that cabinet report on next month. So does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Appreciate it. Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question for you. You mentioned that if there is sort of poor housing stock that is costing a lot in terms of maintenance, that you would look potentially consider disposing of these. Just a question for you or the officers really. What would be the disposal process for disposing of a piece of, an item of poor housing stock? Does it normally go through auction, or do you market it through the open market, or what? I'm just interested in understanding how that would actually go. Thank you.
So obviously there has to be a decision made by myself that it happens, but I think Mr. White is going to be the best person to answer how it's done and what decisions are made around auction or general market.
It all depends on the nature of the property. There'll be properties that are in a poor state. We have one that we're currently looking to auction at the moment at Bradfield. It's in a very poor state. An airy house, it's got lots of structural issues, and realistically it's beyond our means to put it into good repair. But there will be others that we will take a more open market approach with because they have fewer problems. Generally speaking, problem properties we look at an auction route with, and ones that aren't quite so bad will be more of an open market sale.
Okay, thank you. And just one small point. If it goes to auction, then officers would set a reserve price, a minimum price that they would accept for that, or is it just zero? I'm assuming that we would set a minimum price, and then presumably it would be the officers in conjunction with the portfolio holder that would set that. Is that right?
Absolutely right. The reserve price will be set based on the advice of the auctioneer and valuer, and the cabinet or the portfolio holder, depending on the value, will make a decision in advance to accept what the price is, to accept that price, subject to it being above the reserve limit. And the reason for doing that in advance is that when the hammer goes down at an auction, you're contractually bound to proceed with the sale. So we can't then go back into a governance process that could go either way.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Does anyone have any other? No? Okay. Thanks for that. The next is question 3, which is Graham Steady to Andy Baker.
That the HRA maintenance and capital programme needs to be reduced in expenditure terms. What are the underlying factors behind the expenditure increase in these areas?
Thank you. If I just read out the answer I gave you in writing. So if I can refer you to my response to question 1 in terms of the investment in the housing stock within the context of the wider HRA financial position. In terms of the underlying factors, a number of issues were highlighted within the report considered by Cabinet on the 20th of December and included increases in costs being experienced by suppliers, contractors, underlying inflationary pressures, and meeting the regulatory and asset management plan requirements. In terms of additional details, the nature and the age of the Council's housing stock has become costlier to maintain, as we know with our own homes. Costs of materials and labour have also increased, and no doubt the government's recent decision to increase employers' national insurance contributions may also have an impact in the costs of any contractors this council may use and charge. And I think, as I've stated, and it's been stated before, the council must ensure that the homes it lets to tenants meet the decent home standard and are free from significant disrepair and hazards to health. The cost of undertaking this maintenance continues to rise due to inflationary pressures. The council is also required to meet a set of tenant satisfaction measures and is subject to an enhanced programme of regulation from the regulator for social housing. In light of this, it is not necessarily possible to reduce expenditure, but it is possible to seek efficiencies and reprioritise work where this does not jeopardise the safety of our tenants or lead to the council failing to meet regulatory requirements. Many councils with retained housing stock are experiencing increasing pressure on their housing revenue accounts, with annual deficits forecast for the short term. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a?
Yeah. So on the theme of efficiencies and obviously doing up stock, have we ever actually looked at doing selective licensing schemes to raise money in the private sector?
I've been advised it's not relevant because this is the HRA budget. It's not relevant because we can't do it, I don't think, because this is the HRA. That's why I got my hearing aid in. I think I'll let the officer answer that because you may be able to explain it a bit better than I can.
Thank you. Yeah, so selective licensing scheme applies to the private sector, so the private rented sector. So here we're talking about the housing revenue account, whereas the private sector licensing would be for the general fund. So the two are not kind of.
But couldn't we use the money from the selective licensing to subsidise our housing revenue account, or would that be more appropriate for the general fund account?
I think anything we raise through that would have to stay within the general fund. Richard will correct me, but you can't move money between general fund and HRA in that way.
So you can't fertilise as such.
Thank you. Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. In Councillor Baker's answer, he's put down that the cost of materials and labour have also increased, and no doubt the government's decision to increase the employers' NI contributions may also have an impact in the cost of any contractors. Do we have any idea of what the percentage increase, or in pound notes figures, what the likely increase is expected to be as a result of this delightful policy that the government have introduced in terms of increasing the national insurance figures and lowering the threshold to £5,000 and increasing the rate from 13.8 to 15%?
If I give you the short answer is no. I will be discussing with officers that where it does have an impact and how it impacts on this council and its budget. But at the moment, I don't have any figures to give you. When I do, I will quite happily share that with you.
But could we safely say that it is inevitable that it will affect the council because it's having such an impact on small business that there will be a knock-on effect in terms of costs? It's inevitable that will probably happen. Thank you.
I think it'll have an impact. What that impact will be is an unknown, isn't it, at this point?
Does anyone else have any questions? I've just gone. I'll try not to have a supplementary on every question, but you say that, quote, not necessarily possible to reduce expenditure, but it is possible to seek efficiencies and to reprioritise work where this does not jeopardise the safety of our tenants or lead to the council failing to meet regulatory requirements, unquote. When will we see this reflected in the financial performance reports?
Sorry. I think I'm going to elaborate on the answer would be the best thing. So we need to use what we have more efficiently as we do in our own homes to maintain them. So for argument's sake, one of the parts of the decent homes is that we replace certain items at a certain time or a certain period. But do we need to do it at that time? So do we need to put a new bath in after 10 years when we could possibly do it after 12 because there's nothing wrong with it? Why would we throw a decently good bath out just to replace it with a different bath? So going forward, and I have done it in the last year as well, is I have a spreadsheet with what we have budgeted for in the HIPS budget. So, and I'm always asking why things cost so much. Also, within the quarterly reports that we're provided by the Section 151 officer, that shows where we are with all the budget. But I want to make sure that the money that we put into the budget is the money we spend and not needing to be topped up from reserves, because that's unsustainable. So, like I say, if at the end of the year, the financial year, there are issues where we can maybe carry over into the next financial year, which won't have an effect that the regulator looks at. And that's the thing. We are now in a period of strict regulation by the regulator for social housing, who actually doesn't care if we can't afford things. There is a standard we must meet. And if we don't meet that standard, we will be graded badly. And that is not good for the reputation of this council. I can't remember the name of the council, but it is in one in Essex. They got a C3, which is very low. They were downgraded to a C4 and they were criticised very heavily. I don't see us ever being in that position, because I'm comfortable where we are with what we're doing with all the money we invest and how we deal with our tenants. And that's the main thing, is the tenants have a decent home to live in. We have decent homes to live in. Why shouldn't our tenants have a decent home?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, of course.
I just wonder if we're asking questions that there is no answer to, because, you know, ultimately, like the impact of the national insurance increase on contractors, well, we don't know that, because we don't know what contractors would be using, how many employers. There's too many variables to be able to guesstimate those answers. Sorry, you're all looking at me blankly. Have I gone off at a tangent? But that, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, how can anybody answer the questions that we're asking if there's too many variables in the situation? Do you understand what I'm saying, Richard? I'm looking to you because you're the money person. But I just don't know how we can ask somebody to guesstimate the impact, because it's an unknown quantity, isn't it? We'll only know that when we get the budget, quarterly budget reports.
It's a financial risk, isn't it? We can't put a figure. You can't put. You know, and I think that's what we're trying to do, is recognise it. It's a good councils and a council that's aware of what its risks are, its financial risk. Which are, you know, that's the whole point of the HRA business plan, is to kind of look at those risks, respond to those risks in a timely fashion, which is part of the conversation. One, you know, what we're doing and when we're doing it. I think it's really important discussion. But yeah, you're right. You can't put figures on such things. Now, I mean, you might be able to put figures on things later on if you're, as Councillor Baker mentioned, if you're renegotiating a contract because someone can't afford to provide services to the council anymore. I'm not suggesting that's where we are, but that does happen, where a contractor might say, I can't afford to work for you anymore, I want to renegotiate the price. Well, that you would be able to isolate possibly the cost of national insurance, but in other situations where you're just procuring stuff on the open market in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, you will never be able to isolate it. You know it's in there, and you know it's a real thing.
Start seeing those figures and those tenders coming in.
Yeah. But I think it's right having that discussion around the fact that it's a real risk, financial risk to the HRA and the general fund, which we'll obviously talk about as well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to question 4, which is Matthew Benslem to Andy Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a straightforward question, and one that I feel you'll probably be able to answer quite simply. Do you essentially intend to lobby the government to agree an increase in the annual amount that councils can increase housing rents?
Technology don't get on very often. Yes, short answer. It's the intention to continue to lobby government for the necessary flexibilities as the opportunities arise.
Any supplementary? No? Okay, anyone else? Okay, excellent.
If you'd like me just to very briefly expand on my answer, obviously lobbying government about rental increases within the HRA. So recently the government, via the regulator of social housing, consulted on its future social housing rent policy. The policy proposed would remain in place for at least 5 years from the 1st of April 2026, with a further 5-year settlement for the period beyond. And it's expected that rents will be permitted to be increased each year by CPI from September, so the CPI number in September, plus 1 percentage point. So as CPI was 1.7% in September, our rents will be going up, provided council agrees the budget, by 2.7%. So the council's responded to that consultation recently.
Okay, thanks for that. Peter.
So there is a question I've got on that one, which is, I can see you've said yes, that you are intending on lobbying the government. Do you intend on speaking to our 2 local MPs that may help you in that endeavour? Thank you.
I would hope that they would support any lobbying that we do. So yes, is the short answer to that, Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Okay, moving to question 5, which is Peter Harris to Mark Stevenson, the leader.
Thank you very much, Chair. Question 5. Excuse me. Does the council intend to seek feedback from businesses on whether they are likely to survive or go under in the current economic climate, so that it can gauge on the likely impact on business rates, collection amounts? And if I may be specific, as a small business owner myself, I know how, there's kind of things that are impacting business, which is, as already been mentioned, national insurance increase and the lowering of the threshold, particularly around in the Clacton sort of town centre, the reduction in business rates allowance from 70% to 40%, the increase which has already happened last year, which is the corporation tax increasing from 19 to 25%, and of course increased energy costs as well. And the feeling that I have amongst many businesses is that confidence is low at this moment in time. So seeing how important business rates are we in discussions with them? What's the feel in terms of where we see business? Is it too early to see the impact? What are we doing really? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. And you mentioned your business, but we should declare it's not in this district, so therefore no need to put an interest in. So I'll read the answer out. The council does engage with local businesses on a regular basis via the economic growth team and receives feedback on various issues such as impacts from economy, market, etc. Yes, obviously national insurance, energy prices, you name it. There's all sorts of things that businesses have to compete with. And I think the team does a very good job of touching base with quite a few businesses. And I think it's fair to say you've only got to look at any trade magazine, that the confidence is very low at the moment. When it comes to business rate collection, we're not going to see any sort of quick and fast indication. I think businesses are, the biggest hit obviously that you keep mentioning is the national insurance. Yeah, and I think they're going to take time and stock. You've seen recruitment already go down, and you're going to see whether people think their businesses are viable. You've already heard some stories that some businesses, not in this area but across the country, are now saying they're going to close, with other businesses passing that national insurance contribution onto their customers through price increases on their products. As for the business rate collection, I think it's fair to say that we will continue to do what we do with the business rates. We have got a reserve earmarked for any problems around the business rates. That's just under £2 million. And just so we're clear, we've never touched it in 10 years, so I'm not expecting to do it this time either.
That's fine. That's fine. I just hope we don't feel the need to actually dip into another reserve fund. But we'll see. But hopefully business will continue and thrive in this area. But it's proving difficult for all small businesses in particular. Thank you.
Right, if I can just come back on that, Chairman. I think we should remember what reserves are there for. It is for those unexpected moments. It's about that risk that we were talking about earlier, where we can't see the financial risk. We haven't got the crystal ball. We can't see what's going on. So when things do go wrong, it's not suddenly knee-jerk reactions to something. We can then sit there, like we did with the HRA, and I'm pretty sure we won't, but if we ever needed to, we've got the reserve there in place to make sure that we have the smooth transition and it doesn't affect our basic budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. On that, are there any incentivised programs or government grants that we could direct businesses to attract them into the area? You can just say no if there's not any.
I think that's a question further down. So if you want to wait until that answer, I think that's actually your question. Number 8. So should we wait to number 8? Okay, shall I pick it up on number 8 though? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next one is question 6, Bernie Goldman to Mark Stevenson.
Once again, we're talking about the general fund here. Yeah, you say there's going to be a deficit, a guesstimate, I presume, of 700,000 by the end of 27, 28? Yeah, in your response? Yeah.
I'm sorry, Councillor Burney, I believe you've got to read the question out. I'll give you my written answer and then we can have a chat about it. So.
Okay, right. In relation to the general fund budget, what measures will be taken by Cabinet to avoid using up all the TDC's reserves?
Thank you very much, Councillor Godwin. What a great question. As set out in the report to Cabinet in December 2024, in terms of supporting the underlying context of the development of the budget for 25-26, it is worth highlighting the following comments that were set out in earlier financial reports. In terms of the later years of the forecast, it is important to highlight significant challenges arising from inflationary increases, which are expected to exceed our ability to raise income from council tax and business rates. Therefore, at some reasonable point in the future, the council must be able to put itself in the position of balancing its annual budget. Otherwise, the position is unsustainable. Based on the current financial forecast position, the expected annual imbalance between expenditure and income from 27 to 28 onwards is approximately 700,000. This would therefore require corresponding annual ongoing savings to be realised over the full forecast period to enable a balanced budget to be set each year.
So,
I do have another bit, sorry, I've just turned the page. Notwithstanding notwithstanding the above, I do apologise, Councillor Goldman. Notwithstanding the above, the Council's long-term plan and forecast risk fund provide flexibility and support against which the development of the Council's forecast can be considered, and it continues to provide the time and opportunity to respond to the structural annual budget deficit that is still estimated to remain at the end of 26-27. The report also acknowledged that further savings will therefore need to be identified to deliver a sustainable financial position. Within the highlight priorities report, that will also be considered by Cabinet on December 24, that was also considered by Cabinet on December 24. A number of items were set out to support the Council's financial sustainability, including further developing the savings plan, along with the transformational strategy to help actively manage the Council's costs and liabilities. Similarly to the point highlighted within the response to Q2 above, there will be opportunity to provide updates during the year as part of the quarterly financial performance reports, along with the highlight priority progress reports. Over to you.
Thank you for that. So what measures are you going to try and put in place to try and protect some of those reserves?
I think I'm going to take you back a little bit. Yeah, so when we came into administration, there was already a structural deficit. Since then, we've already found £1 million worth of savings. That's an ongoing thing. And I think if you look at our highlight priorities, I think this is where you probably got the question from, we set out an additional 2.5 million to be delivered in the next 2 years. Those two things in themselves will help reduce the structural deficit. And I think it gives us breathing time and an opportunity to look where we can find further savings. notwithstanding that in a few years' time, if things go ahead, LGR may come along and everything that we have put in front of us today, you know, will go out the window with a new forecast risk fund, if that's what the new unitary decides. And that's assuming that is. But for now, I'm going to assume that we're going to move forward as if the unitary is not here. And the forecast risk fund is it's a forecast risk fund which allows us to smooth out the bumps. You know, so for me, the way that I always see that is I speak to other leaders. I spoke to one the other day, and they've got a massive budget gap which they've got to find by the end of February. Yeah. Now, we don't have that problem because we have a forecast risk fund. Yeah. So ours is a smooth transition. We're not cutting. I think I'm answering the next question actually. We're not cutting services, knee-jerk reaction or anything else. We've got time to think about long, drawn-out plans on how we save it. And that's really what 25 and 26 are all about, it's the 2.5 million. And as we're going through those years, we'll be looking at 26, 27, 27, 28, and so on, trying to find those savings and seeing where we can eke them out. You can't predict, no crystal ball, about what's coming. I couldn't have seen the national insurance, I couldn't have seen, you know, COVID, I couldn't have seen any of the things that have absolutely hammered us, you know, and I couldn't. So I think I'll leave it there, but that's where I am with that.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've just got a couple of questions which may be predictable. The first one is, if we continue as we are, when will our reserves be depleted?
Question 7. Was that question 7? Yeah.
Question 6.
Question 6.
It's just a supplementary to Bernie's question.
Okay. All right. If we continue as we are, when would we? So if we did nothing and didn't do the savings plan, I'm going to look at my finance director and say 4 years. Yeah. If we did nothing, and that's not the. It's a hypothetical again, you know. So.
Yeah, from 2027, 28 onwards, you'll be starting to have that sort of difficult. Hypothetically, again, if we do nothing and the forecast pans out as it's been sort of presented so far, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. And then the second part is, when can we expect to see plans appearing in Q1, Q2, or Q3?
I think I'm going to refer you to my answer earlier about when so you're talking about the highlight priorities again. You know, we're putting the milestones into cabinet next month, and it will be in there.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is question 7, which is myself to Mark Stevenson. Once the forecast risk fund and the corporate investment fund are gone, what will be the plan to achieve the required savings / lower expenditure?
Okay, I'll read the answer. Can I please refer you to the response to question 6 above, which I hope addresses the point. It is worth adding that identifying savings and lowering costs will always be activities that need to be undertaken by local authorities as part of its best value duties and financial planning processes, and there will always be a balance in terms of how they will use their resources. For example, it will be important to use funds such as the Corporate Investment Fund to invest in areas that can help save the council money wherever possible, and therefore go hand in hand with supporting our financial viable future. In terms of and that's that. Sorry, that's the answer to that question. Getting ahead of myself.
Thanks for that. It's appreciated. No, I've got no supplementary. I don't know if anyone else has. No? Okay, thanks. So it's now question 8, which is Carrie Doyle to Mark Stevenson.
This is slightly different from what I was asking you, because I was asking for specifics, and this is very broad, but that's fine. So what is the council's strategy to attract businesses to the district in order to increase business rates income, plus ensuring housing growth to increase council tax income?
it is slightly different to what you asked, but I did want to pick them up. They seem collectible.
You can merge them, that's
Yes.
fine.
So the written response is, in terms of attractive businesses, the council works with inward investors when they come forward and includes work being undertaken within the Freeport East project where such investments is coming forward. It is also important to highlight the growth that is also currently being seen across the district, which is supported by the council's economic growth and planning teams and via various activities and initiatives such as the tendering for growth. In terms of housing growth, the council has a strong track record of house delivery, with the main driver being the local plan. So that's my response there. As for the initiatives, there are various initiatives. They're government-led initiatives, like you have small business rate relief. So that's one of the things that could happen. I think there's a lot more that could be done, but it's not in our purview to do anything with the rates as such. It's a government set thing, and so it's down to them. I can look for initiatives, but I am not aware of too many around the business rates. And to be honest, I'll bring that one back as a question to need to be answered.
Okay. What's an inward investor as and do you have inward and outward investors? It just seems a bit of a. Just explain what an inward investor is to me.
My understanding of an inward investor, that's one of the. Just thinking to make sure I get this right. An inward investor is someone who is within the district, invests in the people within the district. So I don't want to name any companies. I've got loads in my head, but I'm just like, no, you're not allowed to use them. So a company might have X amount of money and it will invest in product research to grow jobs, grow businesses. It's that kind of inward investment towards the district. So where you're helping either economically or business employability, environmentally, all those sort of things that a business might do, then we'll work with them.
Okay, thank you. Graham?
Thanks. When we mention Freeport East project, my understanding is that the investment at the moment is all going into Stowmarket with the industrial park there, and it hasn't really percolated down to Harwich, Felixstowe. Is that the vibes you're getting? And have we got any figures or data to say that there is anything in the pipeline to actually come into Harwich, obviously?
I haven't got details on Freeport, like we say. I think we're a net gain on Freeport. But as for the details, I'm the wrong portfolio holder for answer for that one. Councillor Henderson's the director for the cabinet, and he deals with all of that. I can get you a written answer and brought back to that one, so I'm happy to do that.
Is there any further, Graham? Peter?
Thank you, Chairman. I see this as a huge topic for our district. Obviously, yeah, we've mentioned the Freeport, but inward investment coming into the district, new businesses. Basically what that means is jobs. Plain and simple, jobs changes people's lives. You put money in people's pockets, they go and spend that money in the local economy. It boosts the economy and confidence improves, etc., etc. It's self-fulfilling. So I see that topic as a huge topic, and one, I don't know whether it falls within the remit of this committee or not, but is worthy of